Emma Davies pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway of Riverside College as the clock on the wall showed 5 in the morning. The sound of her footsteps echoed softly in the quiet building. At 42 years old, she had walked these same halls every day for 3 years, and she knew every corner by heart. Her brown hair was pulled back into a neat bun. Just like always, she wore her blue cleaning uniform with care, making sure it was clean and pressed. Emma took pride in her appearance. Even though most people barely looked at her as she worked, the college was peaceful at this early hour. Emma liked it this way. She could work without interruption, lost in her own thoughts. As she mopped the shiny floors, she often thought about her daughter Lucy, who was 17 and studying hard for her final exams at school. Lucy was everything to Emma. The girl was smart. Much smarter than Emma had ever been. She spent hours every evening with her books, determined to get good grades so she could go to university. Emma watched her daughter work so hard, and it filled her heart with both pride and worry. The students at Riverside College walked past Emma every day, without really seeing her. They were young and full of energy, carrying their expensive bags and talking about their classes. Emma had learned to become invisible to them. She would clean round them as they sat in the common areas, and they would continue their conversations, as if she wasn't there. Sometimes Emma wondered what these students thought about their futures. They seemed so confident, so sure that good things would happen to them. Emma hoped Lucy would feel that same confidence one day. What none of these students knew was that Emma had once lived a very different life. Years ago, before Lucy was born, Emma had been known by another name in the local boxing gym. They called her Lightning Emma because of how fast she could move in the ring. She had been good at boxing, really good. Emma had won match after match, and people would come from other towns just to watch her fight. She was strong and quick, and she never backed down from a challenge. The other fighters respected her, and she felt proud of what she could do. But that was a long time ago, in what felt like another life. When Lucy was born, Emma looked at her tiny baby daughter and made a decision. She would leave the boxing world behind. Fighting was no place for a mother who wanted to give her child a stable, peaceful life. Emma had hung up her gloves and never looked back. She found work cleaning offices, then later got the job at the college. It wasn't exciting work, but it was steady. She could count on her paycheck every month, and that was what mattered now. Every morning, Emma approached her work with the same care she had once brought to training for her fights. She cleaned each room thoroughly, making sure everything was perfect. She organized the supplies, checked that all the bins were empty, and made sure the floors shone under the lights. The work gave Emma time to think and plan. As she cleaned, she would calculate how much money she was saving each month. Every penny went toward Lucy's future. Emma had opened a special account at the bank just for her daughter's education. It was growing slowly but steadily. Emma lived simply so that Lucy could have more opportunities. They shared a small flat with 2 bedrooms. Nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable. Emma cooked simple meals and bought second-hand clothes for herself, but she always made sure Lucy had what she needed for school. Sometimes Lucy would ask her mother about her life before she was born. Emma would smile and say she had worked different jobs, nothing special. She never talked about the boxing, about the crowds cheering and the feeling of victory. That Emma belonged to the past. As Emma finished cleaning the main hallway, she looked out the window and saw the sun beginning to rise. Soon the college would fill with students and teachers, and the quiet morning would be over. But for now, in these peaceful moments, Emma felt content. She thought about Lucy, probably still asleep in her bed, and smiled. Tonight Lucy would sit at the kitchen table with her books, working toward her dreams, and Emma would be there, making tea and offering encouragement. Just as she had every night for years. This quiet life suited Emma perfectly. She had found peace in a simple routine, in her honest work, and in watching her daughter grow into a remarkable young woman. The dreams she had for Lucy made every early morning and every long day worthwhile. The peaceful routine that Emma had enjoyed for 3 years came to an end when the new students arrived in September. Among them was James Thornton, a 19-year-old boy who carried himself like he owned the world. His family was one of the wealthiest in the region, and everyone at the college knew the Thornton name. James never walked alone. He always had his two friends with him, Robert and David. They followed him everywhere like shadows, laughing at his jokes and agreeing with everything he said. All three boys dressed in expensive clothes and carried the latest phones and gadgets. For the first few weeks, these boys treated Emma the same way all students did. They walked past her as if she was invisible, talking loudly about their plans for the weekend or complaining about their classes. Emma continued her work as usual, grateful that they paid her no attention. But slowly, things began to change. James started to notice Emma as she cleaned round them. At first, it was just small glances, but then he began to watch her work with a strange interest. Emma felt uncomfortable under his gaze, but she tried to ignore it and focus on her tasks. The trouble started with little things. Emma would finish mopping a section of the hallway, only to find that James had deliberately dropped his empty coffee cup on the wet floor. When she looked up, he would be smiling at his friends, pretending it was an accident. Then the boys began dropping their rubbish on floors that Emma had just cleaned. They would unwrap sweets and let the papers fall, or finish their drinks and leave the bottles on clean tables. Each time, Emma would quietly clean up after them, saying nothing. "Look at the cleaning lady," James would say to Robert and David, loud enough for Emma to hear. "She's always here, isn't she? Like she lives in this place." His friends would laugh, and Emma would feel her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She tried to time her cleaning so she wouldn't be working near them, but it was impossible to avoid them completely. The comments grew worse as the days passed. James would make remarks about Emma's appearance, saying her hair looked messy or her uniform was old. He would imitate her accent when she spoke to other staff members, making his friends giggle. Emma's hands would shake slightly as she worked, but she never responded to their cruelty. She would remind herself that she needed this job, that Lucy's future depended on her staying calm and professional. One afternoon, Emma was cleaning the student common area when James and his friends arrived. She was almost finished, carefully picking up the last pieces of rubbish and wiping down the tables. The area looked perfect, ready for the next group of students. James watched her work with that same strange smile he had been wearing for weeks. Emma could feel him staring at her, but she focused on her task, hoping he would get bored and leave. Just as Emma was about to move to the next area, James walked over to a large bin full of papers and assignments. Without warning, he kicked it hard, sending papers flying everywhere across the floor that Emma had just finished cleaning. "Psst," he said with a cruel smile, looking directly at Emma. "Looks like you have more work to do." Robert and David burst into laughter, as if watching Emma's work being destroyed was the funniest thing they had ever seen. Other students in the area looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. Emma stared at the mess of papers scattered across her clean floor. Her hands began to shake, not from fear or sadness, but from something much deeper, deep inside her chest. She felt a familiar string, like a sleeping animal waking up after a long rest. It was the same feeling she used to get years ago, right before a boxing match. Her body was remembering what it felt like to be challenged, to face someone who wanted to hurt her. Her muscles tensed, and for a moment, she could almost feel the weight of boxing gloves on her hands. Emma's breathing became deeper and more controlled. She could feel her heart beating faster. And her vision seemed to sharpen. Every instinct told her to stand up, to show these boys what happened when someone pushed Lightning Emma too far. But then she thought of Lucy, studying hard at home, dreaming of university. Emma took a deep breath and knelt down to pick up the papers. She had made a promise to herself long ago that she would never use violence again. She had too much to lose now. As she gathered the scattered papers, Emma could hear James and his friends walking away, still laughing about what they had done. She continued cleaning, but something inside her had changed. The peaceful woman who had worked quietly for 3 years was still there. But now she shared space with someone else, someone who remembered what it felt like to fight. The weeks that followed became a nightmare for Emma. James and his friends seemed to take pleasure in making her life difficult, and they had learned to time their attacks perfectly. They would wait until the hallways were full of students before they struck. Emma would be mopping the floor when James would walk by with a large coffee in his hand. He would pretend to trip, spilling the hot liquid all over her freshly cleaned surface. The other students would stop and stare as Emma quietly got her mop and started cleaning again. "Sorry about that," James would say loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "I guess some people are just meant to clean up after others." His friends Robert and David would laugh, and soon other students would join in. Emma felt her face burn with shame as she worked, but she kept her head down and said nothing. The boys became bolder with each passing day. They would drop their lunch trays near Emma, sending food scattering across the floor. They would stick chewing gum under tables right after she had cleaned them. Once, David poured an entire bottle of water down the stairs just as Emma was finishing mopping them. "Look at the cleaning lady go," James would announce to anyone who would listen. "She's so good at her job. It's like she was born to clean up messes." Emma tried to change her schedule, working earlier or later to avoid the boys, but they seemed to know exactly when she would be in each area. It was as if they were studying her routine, planning their next attack. The comments about her appearance became more cruel. James would point out that her uniform was getting old, or that she looked tired. He would make jokes about her accent in front of other students, speaking in an exaggerated way that made people laugh. Emma's confidence began to crumble. She started to dread coming to work each morning. At home, Lucy noticed that her mother seemed sad and worried, but Emma always said everything was fine. She couldn't tell her daughter what was happening. Lucy was so close to finishing school and applying to university. Emma wouldn't let these boys destroy the dream. Finally, Emma decided she had to do something. She made an appointment with the college management, hoping they would help her. She sat in the office of Mr. Peterson, the head administrator, and told him everything that had been happening. Peterson listened with a serious expression, nodding at the right moments and making notes. "This is very concerning, Mrs. Davies," he said when she finished. "We don't tolerate this kind of behavior at our college." Emma felt hope for the first time in weeks. Maybe the harassment would finally stop. But nothing changed. The boys continued their cruel games, and Emma realized that Mr. Peterson had done nothing to help her. She later learned from another staff member that the Thornton family had donated a new wing to the college library used 2 years ago. Their money meant more than Emma's dignity. The breaking point came on a cold Thursday evening in November. Emma was working late in the library, cleaning the reading areas and organizing the books. She thought she was alone in the building, which was why she felt safe working at this hour. She was pushing her cart between the tall bookshelves when she heard footsteps behind her. Emma turned round and saw James walking toward her, with Robert and David flanking him on either side. The library was empty except for the four of them. Well, James said, his voice echoing in the quiet space. It's our favorite cleaning lady. Emma's heart started beating faster. There was something different about James tonight. His usual cruel smile was gone, replaced by something colder and more dangerous, you know. I've been thinking, James continued, moving closer to Emma. Maybe you're in the wrong job. Maybe you should find work somewhere else. Emma gripped the handle of her cleaning cart tighter. She could feel the familiar stirring in her chest. The same feeling she had experienced weeks ago when James had knocked over the bin. But this time it was stronger. Please let me pass, she said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. I just want to finish my work and go home. James stepped directly in front of her, blocking her path to the exit. Robert and David moved to either side, cutting off any other escape routes. Emma was trapped between the bookshelves with nowhere to go. I don't think you understand, James said, his voice low and threatening. My family pays a lot of money to this college. We don't want people like you here. Emma's breathing became deeper and more controlled. She could feel her body automatically assessing the situation, the distance between herself and each boy, the weight of her cleaning cart, the narrow space between the bookshelves. These were calculations she hadn't made in years, but her body remembered them perfectly. For the first time in 3 years, Emma felt truly afraid. Not of James or his friends, but of what she might do to them if they pushed her too far. The rain was hitting the windows of the sports hall hard that Thursday evening when Emma pushed her cleaning cart through the double doors. She was running late with her work because the boys had made another mess in the cafeteria earlier that day. Now she had to clean the sports hall before she could go home to Lucy. The hall was empty and quiet except for the sound of rain on the roof. Emma liked cleaning this space because it was large and open, and she could work without worrying about students getting in her way. She started by sweeping the floors, moving her broom in steady, rhythmic strokes. Emma was halfway through, mopping when she heard voices echoing from the entrance. Her heart sank as she recognized the laughter of James, Robert, and David. They had found her again, even though she had tried to work late to avoid them. The three boys walked into the hall with confident steps, but this time something was different. David was holding his phone up, pointing it toward Emma. The small red light showed that he was recording everything. Perfect, James said, his voice carrying across the empty hall. Now, we can show everyone what happens to people who don't belong. Here, Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever they were planning was worse than the daily harassment she had endured. She could see the cruel excitement in their eyes as they approached her. Please, Emma said, backing away from them. I'm just trying to do my job. I'll be finished soon and then I'll be gone. But James wasn't listening. He was walking straight toward her cleaning cart, his hand reaching out to grab it. I think we've been too nice to you, he said. Maybe it's time you learned your place. Emma watched his hand move toward her cart, toward the tools she used to earn money for Lucy's future. Something deep inside her mind clicked, like a switch being turned on after years of being off. James's fingers touched the handle of her cart. Emma moved. Her hand shot out faster than anyone expected, catching his wrist in a grip that was firm but not painful. With a smooth twist of her arm, she made him let go of the cart and step back. The movement was so quick and precise that for a moment, nobody understood what had happened. James stared at his hand, then at Emma, his mouth open in shock. Don't touch my things, Emma said. Her voice was still quiet, But now it carried something new, a calm authority that made the boys take another step back. Years of training that Emma had thought she had forgotten came flooding back. Her body remembered how to stand, how to move, how to control a situation without using violence. She had spent so long trying to hide this part of herself that she had almost forgotten it existed. James was staring at her as if he was seeing her for the first time. The quiet cleaning lady, who had endured weeks of abuse, had just moved like a professional fighter. His friends, Robert and David, were looking between Emma and James, suddenly unsure of what to do. You can't do that to me," James stammered, his voice shaking. "Do you know who I am? Do you know what my family will do to you?" Emma looked him directly in the eye. She wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in months, she felt completely in control of the situation. "I know exactly who you are," she said calmly. "You're a boy who thinks money makes him powerful. You're someone who enjoys hurting people who can't fight back. The question is, do you know who I am?" The three boys stood frozen, finally understanding that they had made a terrible mistake. The woman they had been tormenting was not helpless. She had been choosing not to fight back. But that choice could change at any moment. Emma slowly picked up her cleaning supplies, never taking her eyes off the boys. She moved with the same grace and control she had shown when she caught James's wrist. Every movement was deliberate and confident. "I've been patient with you because I believe in second chances," she said as she walked toward the door. "I've let you disrespect me because I thought you were just young and foolish. But my patience has limits." The boys watched her leave, unable to move or speak. They had come to the sports hall thinking they were going to humiliate a helpless cleaning lady. Instead, they had discovered that they had been bullying someone far stronger than they had ever imagined. David was still holding his phone, but he had stopped recording. The video he had planned to use to embarrass Emma would now only show the world that they had been defeated by a woman, and they had underestimated as Emma walked out of the sports hall. She felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt proud of who she was. All of who she was. The mother, the worker, and yes, the fighter. By Friday morning, everyone at Riverside College had heard about what happened in the sports hall. The story spread from student to student like wildfire. Some people said Emma had fought 3 boys at once. Others claimed she had thrown James across the room. The truth was much simpler, but it was still shocking to everyone who knew the quiet cleaning lady. Students who had walked past Emma for years without seeing her now stopped to look at her as she worked. Some nodded politely when they saw her. Others whispered to their friends as she passed by. Emma felt strange being noticed after so many years of being invisible. But she walked with her head held higher than before. More importantly, other people began to speak up. A kitchen worker named Mary told everyone how James had thrown food at her when she was serving lunch. A security guard named Tom shared how the boys had laughed at him and called him names. A librarian named Susan talked about how they had deliberately made messes for her to clean up. Emma realized that she had not been the only target. James and his friends had been bullying staff members all over the college. But everyone had been too afraid to complain. Now that Emma had shown them it was possible to stand up to the boys, others found the courage to tell their stories. The college administration could no longer pretend the problem didn't exist. Too many people were talking, and parents were beginning to ask questions. Mr. Peterson called Emma into his office again. But this time his attitude was completely different. "Mrs. Davies," he said, looking uncomfortable, "I want to apologize for not taking your concerns seriously before. We're going to make some changes round here." James was suspended from college for 2 weeks. When he returned, he would be on probation. meaning any further problems would result in his expulsion. Robert and David received official warnings that would go on their permanent records. The college also created new policies to protect all staff members from harassment. They set up a special phone line where workers could report problems safely. They promised that all complaints would be investigated properly, regardless of who was involved. But the most important change was happening inside Emma herself. For weeks, she had felt ashamed of her past as a fighter, thinking it made her a violent person. Now she understood that her strength had always been about protecting people, not hurting them. She had learned to use her power in the right way. Emma decided to do something that scared her but felt right. She approached Mr. Peterson with an idea. What if she taught a self-defense class for college staff members? Not to encourage fighting, but to help people feel confident and safe at work. The college agreed to let Emma use a small room in the sports building twice a week. She put up notices round the staff areas, inviting anyone who was interested to join her class. Emma was nervous about teaching, but she remembered how good it felt to help herself, and she wanted to help others feel the same way. The first class had only 5 people, but word spread quickly. Soon Emma had 20 staff members coming regularly. She taught them basic moves to protect themselves, but more importantly, she taught them how to stand tall, speak clearly, and project confidence. You don't have to be afraid, Emma would tell her students. You have the right to feel safe at work. You have the right to be treated with respect. 3 months after his suspension, James returned to college. Emma was cleaning the hallway when she saw him walking toward her. Her body tensed automatically, but she stood her ground and waited to see what he would do. James stopped a few feet away from her, looking nervous and uncomfortable. His friends Robert and David were nowhere to be seen. He stood there for a moment, as if trying to find the right words. "Mrs. Davies," he said finally, his voice quiet and sincere. "I wanted to apologize. I was wrong about you, about everything. I'm sorry for the way I treated you." Emma studied his face and saw something she had never seen before: genuine remorse. She could tell that his suspension had given him time to think about his actions and their consequences. "We all make mistakes," Emma said gently. "The important thing is that we learn from them and try to do better." James nodded and walked away. Emma watched him go, feeling proud that she had chosen to respond with kindness rather than anger. 6 months later, Emma stood in her small kitchen holding an envelope that would change everything. Lucy had been accepted to university with a partial scholarship, combined with the money Emma had saved. They had enough to cover all the costs. Lucy hugged her mother tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I couldn't have done this without you," she whispered. Emma smiled, thinking about how different her life had become. She still cleaned the college halls every morning, but now she walked taller and smiled more often. She had found a way to use her strength to help others, and in doing so, she had finally found peace with her past. The end.